explain to you guys disco for our peers. So all of you here today at this one are peers, which means the options for disco are open to you, but we'll get into that in a moment. So yeah, thanks. So before we continue much more, there we go. So I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet here today, the Awabakal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge any Indigenous people in the room with us here today. So thank you very much. All right, so as I said, we've got Andrew, Dave, me and Jared presenting to you today. We will have an Ask It basket. I think it's around the corner there, meaning that if you do have any questions, concerns, queries after the session, we'll get you to write them in and put it in the basket so we can get back and answer them as best we can.
Or just shoot me an email.
Yeah, shoot us an email, exactly right.
If you don't, also if you do have any concerns or raise anything about, if we might use a bit of jargon or whatever, let us know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Explain a little bit further.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So first up, I might get Andrew up here just to talk a bit about the why at CDAH.
Why we do what we do.
Why do we do what we do?
Why do we do what we do? I don't know why I have to talk about this. You all know why. Why do we do what we do? Look, CDAH is an amazing organisation, and I think I'm just going to indulge myself a little bit here. I just wanted to share a little moment. After our AGM, our annual general meeting last Thursday, I had to rush away and go to the Wallatuka 40th anniversary dinner and Wallatuka Aboriginal Education Program, and it was this amazing opportunity to sort of jump out of CDAH into something else, and it was this real moment of seeing that Wallatuka is so much like CDAH in that it's a community, and it was just interesting listening to Nathan Towney, who's the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Indigenous Studies at the university, who talked about how for Aboriginal people coming into community settings that there's this feeling that you need to be invited in or that you're welcomed in but you're not part of. And I think that for people with disability there's such a parallel with being invited into situations or feeling you have to push your way into situations, whereas when you're here there's a sense of belonging and a sense of community, and I think that it really amplified it for me, and just always trying to put my finger on what that is, and I think it was just that moment of being able to do that, and I think that is the why we do what we do, is because together we're much stronger, and as Dave says, it's we not me, and it's together we are so much stronger, and that social purpose that's shared is just critical to seeing better community outcomes and the work that we do. And I think the connection between Disco and CDAH, of that work in going out and looking at building culture change in other organisations and in the community in general, is really critical to a better outcome for all people with disability in the Hunter region. And I think that although Disco does create paid employment for people, it is not a job, it is an extension of the work we do. We've already done this work in the past, we've done it in many different environments, but to do it in a more formalised way is really about organising that change. So it's really about community organising and creating real change opportunities. So that's a lot about why we do what we do.
Yep, great.
And here's a picture.
So this is your full and your networks, full and active citizenship, building our strength. So this is kind of a bit of a pictorial thing, idea around what Andrew's just spoken about. So this is the work that we do. So we are building full inclusion and active citizenship for our peers. right? That's the goals. And how do we do that? We do that by networks in our community. We do that by sharing peer experiences and learning, and we're building on each other's strengths, right? So that's the broad brushstrokes of how we do the stuff Andrew just described. Thank you. Thanks, Shaylee. Okay, so you're all kind of been in around CEDA for a while now, but so just briefly, just for those that aren't aware, what we are, we're a person with a disability peer-led organisation. As of the AGM, we're also, our board of directors is only people with a disability, and that is a really pretty revolutionary idea. I don't think there's any other disabled people's organisations out there in Australia that are purely led by people with disability. So we can speak from our lived experience. We provide peer support. We empower people to learn and grow through shared experiences. We focus on connection and the contribution of peer experts. And we are a place that offers the I get you factor. So Erin, you're certainly someone who talks about that at length, about that I get you factor. And we are change influencers and shapers, and we are funded to take action. Meaning we aren't a passive organisation, we're out there at the forefront doing the stuff pretty consistently. So, and just relaying a really quick story, I think Jared, you mentioned this as well. George Teleporis, who's another disability activist based down in Melbourne, gave CEDA a rap as being, we don't just talk about it, we're the ones doing the work, right? And that's very different to a lot of disabled people's organisations as well. Thanks, Shelley. No, done that part already.
The other way, Shelley.
So, okay, so this moves us on to how can we strengthen CEDA? CEDA is consistently at a bit of a crossroads with how we funded and membership, and how do we grow both of those things? Like, how do we grow ourselves as an organisation? And so a group of us sort of sat down and teased out a couple of options and ways that we could do that. And that's when we sort of thought around a disco being a great way of not only strengthening CEDA by bringing in different revenue streams, so we're not just relying on government funding, which can be great, or it can be gone within in an instant, but also developing a revenue stream where we can. Sorry. Okay, you're right. Yep. Do you need me to talk a bit louder? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. We probably should have had a microphone. My apologies, Tanya.
We only had one. This one.
If we've got one, we might utilise it.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. So I'll speak louder. So yeah, it's creating another revenue stream, but it's also building CEDA's strengths of our peers as well. So it's not just about let's get money, let's just take whatever role and jobs out there, but it's about building our membership base too, getting more members into CEDA, more people connected within our community, and building the strengths of the people that are already within CEDA itself. Okay, and this links exactly to our strategic goals. Engaging members, right? So that's really critical. We're always talking about building the membership base. It's something that we consistently struggle with, but you know it's certainly a goal that we push towards. Connecting and building our community, so that just doesn't mean the CEDA community, but how we relate to the broader community as well. Thanks. Thanks, Andrew. Is this better for it? Yeah, okay, thanks, guys. Sorry about that. Building and strengths through peer work. So that's building the strengths of our members, but also building the strengths of our peers as well. So those that may not necessarily be members of CEDA yet, building their capacity as well. Thanks.
The other way.
Might just continue punching through to 4 and 5. Thanks, Shaylee. Thank you. Yep, next one. Thanks. Yeah, so systems that work, that's one of our goals. And this is a really interesting one where we're currently in a space where peer work, whilst incredibly important, there's not really a professional aspect to it, right? We do it because, we're all really skilled. Sorry, I'll leave this for it. Yep. Okay. Sorry, Darren. All right. We do the peer work because we do the training that we do. We're all really skilled in this space, but there isn't like a professional qualification around it or something that is recognised by the broader community when it comes to peer work. And so that's certainly a goal that CEDA as an organisation is working towards, that professionalisation of peer work. And just embedding accessibility, and thank you for the reminder about the accessibility, Tanya, embedding accessibility to everything that we do as well. Yep.
That mic's cutting in and out too, Dave.
Yeah, and that might be the user.
Inaccessible user.
We're very big
Yeah.
on accountability here.
Yeah, so as I said, just in terms of the funding stuff, one of our goals is obviously to be able to be standing alone outside of being reliant on government funding. Government funding is really problematic. As I said, governments change, priorities of government can change, and we have no control over that. Also, what can happen is organisations can start jumping from place to place in terms of what they're engaging in based on where the money is coming from. So today we're doing peer work in SILS, but then the government goes, no, we don't want to do that anymore, we want you to do something else. And so there's no development of expertise, no development of community in that space too.
Can you just talk to the notion of if you're paying for it, you'll value it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good one too. So as part of that aspect, we as CEDA have quite often been called on to provide our expertise, and I'm using those inverted commas, expertise and advice to government agencies, to business, to a range of different what they call stakeholders. Now, quite often that stuff isn't paid for. We're doing it because we want to see change and we want to have influence. Now, the problem with it not being paid for is a lot of the times we actually don't respect something that we don't get charged for, right? So it's like if you're given a car, that's one thing, but if you buy a car, there's a different part of your brain that goes, I have to look after this because I've paid all this money to get it, right? So, and it's very much the same with training or guidance or speaking engagements. People will listen more intently, pay more attention and take it more seriously.
And follow up.
If they've had to pay for it, right? And that's where we see disco's having a real place. Okay, yeah, no break for everyone. We're punching through. Why now? Andrew, do you want to speak to why now?
Why not?
Why now? Okay. Well, why now is that we're in the process of going through our ILC grants, which are the grants that CEDA has applied for in the past for the Deafblind Connect, Community Connections, as well as the development of our peer groups and the peer learning hub. So all of our training, all of those parts of what CEDA does come out of federal government, which is ILC funding. We are completely reliant on that, and we need to see change. And out of the back of the Disability Royal Commission and on the back of the NDIS review, it really is there's no stronger time than now for people with disability to assert themselves and say, we really need to be really at the forefront of decision making and in that co-design for how the disability support sector goes forward. And also for CEDA, as Dave says, to be able to say, we can't just rely on going from grant to grant to grant, because if we don't get one, or we don't get the next lot of grants, when we close the doors and we all go home, and all of the hard work that's been done at CEDA gets lost. Whereas for us to look at having that income stream and a really strong voice in our community, because every time we engage with the community, that voice of disability is stronger and louder and demands to be heard instead of asking to be heard. And I think that, to me, that's really the real catalyst for why now. We just need to be doing this stuff, because once again, if people aren't paying for it, they're not listening to it. If it comes out of a grant, people go, oh, we had those nice people from CEDA come along, it was lovely. We gave them a lunch and everybody was sort of happy at the end of the day, isn't it?
There's always one.
Yeah, so really being able to assert that people with disability need to be heard, and off the back of the Royal Commission findings, we really are sort of pushing very loudly for our voices to be heard. And so, yeah, that's pretty well why.
Which is a nice segue into what it is.
Nice segue into what is DISCO. So DISCO is Lived Experience Inclusion Consultants, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's exactly what it is. It's putting the voices of people with disability in that pocket of change, to be able to say the voice of somebody who's, it's very easy to say, oh, we are inclusive, oh, we do this, we do that. But when somebody with a disability says, you know what? No, you aren't. And this is what you need to do to change. And this is the impact that it has on me when you don't. That is profound. And to get organisations who are willing to say that at all levels of operation we need to really do a deep dive into how we do what we do and what we'd like to see changed, with the support of people with disability to make that change happen. That means that every person with a disability that comes through the door as a customer or is seeking employment with that organisation gets a much better outcome and a much higher level of inclusion within the community. So it's pointing at Karen. It's all good. So that's the reason. So it is about industry and employers and professionals who really want to see the work, to see that lasting change happen, because it's not about a short-term fix. We know what a short-term fix looks like. A short-term fix is when we go and put in a fully accessible toilet and then we go, wow, that's a great storeroom. Look at the space we've got now. So let's park all the styrofoam cups in there, or all the high chairs, because it's a good place to put them. Now, so the intent's there. The short-term fix is that we can now open and we can say we're inclusive, but our practices are not inclusive and the culture of the organisation is not inclusive. So being able to say real inclusion means that if I work here and I'm putting a whole heap of high chairs in that bathroom, I'm actually thinking about what that impact is on the person that goes in to use that, because that's devaluing one of our customers or one of our workers when I have to go to the bathroom in a storeroom.
I had that experience only about a fortnight ago at Scratchley's, and the toilet was full of, the disabled toilet was full of boxes, and I said, because Neil often comes around, that's the owner of Scratchley's, and I said to him, I said, that's not on. I said, get all that stuff out. I said, my chair might be small, but someone could come in with a bigger chair, and I said, and it just looked shitty. I didn't say that word, shitty. but you know what I mean? I just said, well, that's...
Just for the recording,
Yep.
we didn't say shitty.
It wasn't appropriate. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you provided that for free.
I did.
And when
And he said, note taken, I'll do better.
yeah.
So I hope he does. So,
Yeah, and I think that, once again, that free advice, and Dave, we've talked about this many times, is that when we went to Hunter New England Health and worked with John Hunter Hospital around better triage for people with disability and for working better with people with disability, we put hours and hours and hours of hard work into that. 3 peers with great experience and great skills went in, worked on a full one-day workshop. We did all the planning workshops. We estimated it was about $5,000 worth of hours that we put into that work. And we got a lunch, basically. And an apology for the fact that we couldn't afford anything more than a lunch. But that was one of the catalysts for why we decided to do disco, because we just went, we're not doing that anymore. And the worst scenario to that was, the follow-up was that 18 months later, we get a contact from John Hunter Hospital again saying, you know, you did that workshop 18 months ago, we'd love to do it again because nothing's really happened in that space. Now, I guarantee you, if they had paid us $10,000, $15,000 as consultants rather than consumers, which is what we were seen as, I reckon you would have seen change, because we would have had to have proven that we got bang for our buck. And that's that whole notion about, if you don't pay for it, you don't respect it. And so they can pay for it. So
I think we had a couple of questions to Doug and Tanya. So,
Before we do that, can I just put the microphone on the microphone?
oh, sure. Thank you.
It's very technical, so it's not my head.
You sure? Okay. If you think of it, Dan, just come back to us. Yeah. So I think Doug's got a question. Andrew, I'll pass that over.
Yeah. Two things. I'd just like to apologise for my phone not being on silent. I used it to wake up this morning. I forgot to turn the alarm off. But so I don't forget questions, Tanya, I do this now, and it allows the person to actually finish what they're saying without me interrupting. What I'd like is a little clarification. Andrew said if we don't get government funds, CEDA won't be here. As an organisation, I don't believe that to be true. It won't be here in the same fashion it is at the moment. We may not have the paid workers that we have, but I just think if we think about the people around the table here who are not being paid, I think there's enough energy, and that was the same last Thursday when we had 18 people turn up for the special general meeting. I get a sense, because the reason CEDA started was because we weren't getting a fair go. And even though, we're now 13 years into the NDIS when Julia Gillard stood up, I think we've still got a way to go, and I think there'll be some of us here still here in 20 years' time, whether or not we're getting paid. Would you agree or not agree with that statement, Mr. Voddick?
Well, if I'm not getting paid, I'm going home. No. No, it's a great point you make, Douglas. Yeah, of course, and point of clarification, yes, of course, CEDA will exist and CEDA will continue to fight the good fight, but it's a lot harder to do it when you go back to where you've started.
Pathways do different pathways for different peers. So if you are a relatively new peer to CEDA, so maybe someone like Kate, your pathway would be you did the welcome to CEDA, and then there's 3 modules available in CEDA. Intro to peer work, mentoring, and facilitation. And those are really good stepping stones to get involved in CEDA in a more active way. And from there, you might enter into a peer group, or you might enter into a peer group before that. And then you might end up facilitating a peer group. So someone like Sarah facilitates a peer group with Aaron. I know that Tanya is about to facilitate, what's your peer group called again?
Career Connections.
Career Connections. also facilitate peer groups. So through that will become, if you go to the next slide again. So you have to, that's a good place to start. You have to be a full member of CDAH, and your membership is renewed every year. You successfully complete all of those training packages. You obviously have to adhere to our policies and our values and our code of conduct. And either through paid employment or the peer groups or another meaningful way demonstrate your involvement in CDAH. And you have to, So the three, it says three, but there's really just two. You can do what you're doing now and stay in CDAH for as long as CDAH shall live. And if you want to go into disco and CDAH, that's a possibility. And I think it's really important to stress that in the first year of disco, nothing should need to change for your current commitments and your current employment if you're employed here. It's not something that you have to go, well, I want to do this now, so I have to quit my job or I have to resign from CDAH. We don't envision, as much as we would like it, we don't envision that disco will be gigantic in the first year.
And you still wouldn't need to quit CDAH.
And you wouldn't need it to become huge. In fact, it's more beneficial for CDAH and for you to smash out the work you're doing at the moment. Because that will build our bigger workforce. We'll go to the next one.
Chelsea?
Can I just ask, in that last slide, those two different avenues looked exactly the same to me, except one said get ready and the other one didn't. So I don't understand what that means. Yeah.
Back city, I'll try to get this.
Like that makes no sense to me. No disrespect.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
What it is, this is just the many roads you can go down, and this is some of Natalie's wonderful graphics here. So essentially, going through what Dave was talking to earlier, if I join CDAH and, as you say, Joe, I want to get involved in peer groups, I want to do peer training, etc. Those are the things that support you to be a really solid CDAH peer and really just part of CDAH activity. For the person that says, I want to do some work in disco, and as much as that work that we do at CDAH and peer facilitation, peer mentoring, for some people there may be that need to want to do a bit more leadership or learn a bit more around outward facing. If you're going to be telling your story for change and you're looking at seeing culture change as a result of telling your story, then there's an element of trauma that goes with that, because it's sort of rehashing your own personal lived experience to an external audience is hard work. And if you have to do it time and time again, and we had, I know Kate won't mind me talking to this, Kate, we're doing some facilitation with the Disability Trust around communicating with people with disability. Now, for Kate to talk about her experience with having her speech device and what life was like before that is an amazing and powerful story, but to tell it again and again is hard work. And so there is some preparation for doing external work as well, and this is where the getting ready for disco comes into it. So we don't just go, wow, you're a CEDA member, go out there and do some facilitation with this group. Now, Kate, somebody like yourself, I know you have good professional skills, obviously involved in a lot of other theatres as well. But for another peer who may not have those professional skills, but their lived experience is such a profound catalyst for change, making sure that we don't set somebody up to fail or to burn out is really, really important. Yep. So making sure that we make sure people are genuinely disco ready before they come into that space. Because you can have a really good script in your mind about what you want to say, but if somebody asks you a really obtuse question, and you will get them, when somebody says something, you go, can I just sort of go across there and beat you up with a stick, because that was just the most revolting thing you said. But you don't realise it's a revolting thing or it's a really hurtful thing. How you manage that is where the education comes from. It's where that real educating a group comes from. Is if somebody asks you something that's really difficult, then that's an opportunity for learning, or it's an opportunity for trauma. So making sure that you're prepared for that and how best to manage that situation is the work that comes in here. And then, once people feel that they're ready, and we don't throw people into the deep end, it'll also be making sure that people are coming into work that they feel that they can manage and handle, and then going in and doing the work in disco. That's why the 3 pathways are there. Does that answer that in a very long-winded way?
Yeah.
Andrew.
Tanya's got a question. Doug first, and then Tanya.
You just go, yeah, that's good. My name's Douglas. Look, what I would see, like, we have 145 people that are currently members of CEDA. But there are 11 people here today that are actually working on getting the disco ready, right? And some of the things that will need to happen is there'll need to be an orientation pack. And you'll need to have demonstrated you actually read through that and actually understand what's in it. So do we get paid to help develop that pack, or is that going to be something we actually do pro bono, right? There'll be a need to actually do a skills audit.
No, I've done that.
Yeah, that's all right, but this is the sort of paperwork that you're going to need for that getting ready stuff. Because one of the things from a PCBU point of view, which is a person-centred business unit, there are fines exceeding $10 million if the organisation doesn't go through this tedious process of actually documenting the way we actually get people ready to actually go out there and fight the good fight. So I just thought I'd use that example of 145 and there's 11. So we'll be able to say, yes, we've been there right at the very beginning. This has been part of my induction to CEDA. So I just thought I'd say that.
Tanya's got a question, Tanya?
Yeah, I'll just respond to that first, if that's all right. Just on that, firstly, PCBU is person conducting business undertaking.
Thanks for correcting me.
That's all right. It took me a while to get that one, that's why. I'm just excited that I know the acronym. Just on that, and so that we're aware that the $10 million that Douglas speaks of, the good thing is it's only really an issue for Erin and Douglas at the moment because they're both on the board. So it's the board that are actually responsible for that. And I'm not trying to be flippant about that. That stuff is really very important, and our due diligence is really important as well. So ensuring that we not only have the supports internally in place for people that are going to go into that type of work, that we also make sure that we have external supervision and we utilise, I can't remember what they call themselves now.
EAP.
Yes, thank you, EAP. Which
That was my question, are we going to have that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd be utilising EAP services
Can you
as well.
explain what that means for people?
That means, I don't know what the acronym for EAP is, I really should.
Employee Assistance Program.
Yeah.
There you go.
Everybody but the CEO.
That's right.
Doesn't bode well, does it, Jack?
I don't recommend using it. Not true at all. EAP is something that we actually take very, very seriously at CEDA. and it really is about ensuring that not only do we have internal supervision and support for people that are undertaking, we know anybody that's involved in community connections also knows that we have supports in place, but EAP is that external provider. It's an anonymous service that allows people to talk to a trained counsellor or a psychologist who can support the worker or volunteer in, sorting through any particular issue that may arise as a result of engaging. So, Tanya.
I just wanted to say I've utilised EAP through CEDA previously and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. It is a really good service, and it's certainly one that we take very seriously. And this genuinely comes down to Douglas's point that he raises, is that that due diligence means that it is in the whole organisation's interest as a community that we're not doing any sort of work that really puts people at any significant risk, and that any risk is certainly is managed, and that we're ensuring that people are well supported.
And this getting ready for Disco is not a set and forget. It's not something you do once. It will be built into the cost of the work that we do, and so it will be a continuum. Because even for the internal training, I did peer mentoring 18 months ago, and I'm probably due for a refresh myself. So it's not something that will be once and off you go type situation. It will be an ongoing learning and development piece.
Yep.
Can you go to
Can I work within Disco? Do you want to talk to her, or do you want me to?
if you want?
Yeah. Okay, so how can I work within Disco? There's a number of avenues. Shayla, do you want to skip to the next one? Just think that might be where the offerings are. Okay, so this is our roadmap to readiness. So as Jared's outlined, becoming a CEDA member, training in peer work, facilitation, mentoring, getting involved within CEDA, Disco readiness and training. So just to reiterate, just around why it's important to remain active within CEDA, it's about keeping yourself up to date with what's going on within the disability community, because we can all, as Andrew sort of talked about, get wrapped up in our own little world of disability, and these are the issues that are impacting me. But I know I learn so much every time I come in to the CEDA office about what's happening in the broader disability community. I mean, literally the other day, Shaylee and I were having a conversation around, changes in legislation for driving that's impacting people on the autism spectrum, right? That's something I had no idea about, right? Because I do not identify as having autism or on the ASD spectrum. And I don't drive. And Andrew doesn't drive, exactly. But not knowing anything about that. But now, because of that conversation with Shaylee and that involvement in the broader CEDA community, I now am armed with that knowledge to take forward and utilise at the next engagement that I have with the broader community. So it's stuff like that. That's why it's important to not just, I'm Disco, I don't need CEDA anymore. No, they're literally meshed together. You can't, as Andrew said, you can't have one without the other.
It's very much an idea space as well.
Yeah, an idea space. Yeah, exactly.
You'll find that people, you might have an idea, and you'll be surprised how many other people in the city office will have the same idea.
And it's that developing of communities of practice within the organisation.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Shelley. Okay, here it is. What will be the work? So currently, as we stand, CEDA has developed 4 different offerings, right? Which we're ready to roll out now, essentially. Those offerings are, the first one is called Discovery. And do you want to skip to the next slide, Shelley? I think they're all written out. Here we go. So, okay, so first one's called Discovery, which is just essentially talking to an organisation about what they want to do. Right? What do you see as your issues around, disability, and getting a bit of a scoping idea about what the work could look like. Our next offering, which is quite substantial, is called, we're tossing around some names, and we might kind of crowdsource this in the future. We're calling it either Inclusion Insights or an Inclusion Insight Check, where we basically do, sorry Tanya, yeah?
I just wondered, will CEDA be approaching businesses?
Yes,
So
100%.
should the first company we approach be the NDIA?
That's a great question. Should the first company we approach be the NDIA?
Let's start small.
Yeah, we're going large. So, great question. Maybe the local NDIS office, but maybe that might be a good start. So yes, no, absolutely, we'll be approaching organisations, and we'll sort of get to that in a later slide around that kind of aspect of disco. I know we've got some really great spruikers here at CEDA who really love to push the message, so we're well positioned to do that. The Inclusion Insights Check, it's basically like a disability or inclusion audit of the organisation. So we go through, talk to members of their organisation, talk to their leadership teams, maybe look at some of their policies and procedures as well, and really figure out where their organisation sits when it comes to inclusion. So that's a big bit of work. Essentially, for those you may be aware, there's these things called disability inclusion action plans, right? It's essentially that, right? It's that sort of style of work that we'll be able to do for these organisations. Okay, so that's one. We've got also DARE, which is Disability Ask Real Experts. That is inclusion training, essentially. So 3-hour-long inclusion training session. We will have 2 peers per session that we do with that. So that's some really exciting stuff to utilise in the future. And that will also obviously come out of the Inclusion Insights Check. So the cool thing about the Insights Check is we'll lay it out. Okay, this is where you guys are at with your inclusion, and then we'll provide a list of recommendations. And some of those recommendations will probably be, you should probably do an inclusion training package, which we have one here, right? So it's providing, extra work for CEDA to really make that change that those organisations require. Because we're not doing this because we think it's a good idea, just because it's a good idea. We're doing it because we know it will make real culture change within those organisations. Okay, so we've got keynote speaking as well, as I said earlier, and the John Hunter Hospital example is a great one of that. So it's that keynote speaking. So if CEDA is asked to speak at a conference or before an organisation about disability and disability-related topics, absolutely, that'll go through Disco, but you're going to pay for it, right? So that's a really good way that we can use people's stories, and you can get your story across to implement change in a keynote speaking position.
Can I just talk to that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
The one thing that does come from that too is that, as Dave says, if we're going to do that, you're going to pay for it. There are going to be times when an organisation who we really align our values with says, can you come and talk to this? This is really important stuff, we want to hear it. Even if we make the decision that no, they don't have to pay for that, we still put a monetary value to it, because it's what's called pro bono work, and instead of it just being a freebie, it's, yep, we can do that. We can do a talk, which we can tell you now is to the value of $2,500. We're happy to provide that to you, but we want the acknowledgement that what the value of that work is. Because once again, even if you're not paying for it, if you know that somebody's giving it to you, you know what it's worth. Instead of it's just, I'll just get C to do this. It's the same, how often you've seen somebody who goes, we're going to have a raffle. I know an artist, I'll just see if they'll give us a painting. And you go, well, that just stops them eating for a week. So, but because it's art, obviously it doesn't have a value. Unless it's hanging in my house and I can tell you what it's worth. But if the artist owns it, well, it's worth nothing because I don't want to pay for it. So it's that same thing. So even if it's pro bono work, we still put a monetary value to it.
It's a really, really great point, Andrew.
So then, like, talk about pathways, and where comes the keynote speaking? There won't be standard. It could be a standard disco keynote where we would talk about the general what we do. But keynotes could also be specific.
Yeah.
So someone like, there might be a housing keynote that needs to be done. So Ellen might be the person to do that because she's got the housing experience. There might be something in the LGBTIQ queer community, so we would send Bryce and so it would be.
If Bryce wants to go.
So what you're saying is,
We will send Bryce.
what you're saying is, it can be broad, but then it can also be specific to a topic.
And we will play to people's strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bryce, did you?
I just wanted to ask two things. One is, so you might not be doing all the things for one organisation, and so if you are going through all that, it wouldn't be just one person.
No.
Okay.
No, that's a great question. No, Bryson, it's not one person doing all this work. Absolutely not. People will be brought in, again, to Jared's point, to play to their experience and expertise. There's some people that will not want us to get in front of a crowd and speak at all. And that's totally legitimate, that's totally fine, that's not everyone's thing. But they might really love analysing policy and procedure, right? That's their real thing, right? Douglas, for instance, if he's really into that stuff, yeah, exactly. You know, so it's utilising people's interests and strengths, right? So yeah, but yeah, so yeah.
Can you work across multiple, like, avenues?
Yeah, absolutely. But recognising, Chelsea, that people only have so much capacity.
Yeah.
Too, right? And the last thing we want to do is have people burn out. So we don't want that to happen. So
And or overpromise and underdeliver.
yeah, exactly. Overpromise and underdeliver. So that'll be a really tricky thing that Disco has to manage in terms of people's workload. And but yeah, there's nothing stopping another person doing, a keynote for Hunter Health and then doing some inclusion training for company A or
just looking at that list, I could see that there's multiple things that I would have the ability to do across those points.
Great.
So yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So well, listen, as much as we'd love to be full guns going all the time, then it's not going to be like that. It's very much going to be a peak and trough kind of scenario with we might get a lot of work and then we mightn't get much at all. So yeah.
And so thanks, Aaron. I'll come over and hold the camera in a minute. But we wouldn't necessarily say to an organisation you can only have one. We would say this is what you need as a package.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose like just one or two. Like you don't get to choose what you want to do. We say this is the work required. Yeah.
Is it a bit like when you get a tradie come in and they're doing a quote, like kind of thing?
Yeah.
And then you give it to them, and then you look at it and think, oh yeah, I can afford that or I can't.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
I want to get a second opinion.
And also, Naomi, recognising that a lot of organisations won't have capacity to do all this stuff in one hit either. So they go, all right, can we stagger this out over a 6-month basis or something like that, right? So yeah, that's
and
really.
I guess those same organisations because if they're reaching out to us, like they're probably wanting to sort of be led.
Yeah.
But instead of, well, what do you think we really need to focus on
Yeah.
as
and that's
a
where
business or a
that's
service?
how our lived experience consultants can step up and direct.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tanya.
Once the lived experience consultant have done the job with the company and wrote their final report.
Yep.
Is there something that we can give that company to say, tick, you passed?
It's a really interesting discussion, and we haven't really come to a set spot with that, Tanya. It's certainly something that we've been talking about and discussing. So it certainly could be something that we end up doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be
It's
great.
the issue. The problem is what a potential problem is. That kind of tick can get diluted if they're not, like the tick could literally only come if they had constant updates or constant check-in with Disco.
You could change the tick every 12 months.
Yeah, change the colour. Yeah. I'll come to you in a second, Aaron. Yeah.
Just before we do, there's a couple of, I'll talk to that in a second, Tanya, because there's a really interesting scenario around that. But one of the things that really comes from this is where the peer profile stuff that you were talking about earlier, Douglas, comes into this, because for us to be able to go out and broker for work and, you know, do the spruiking to say, hey, come and work with Disco, we need to know when we talk to an organisation and members of an organisation who we think would be a good fit for particular roles, because it really suits well if the peer that we work with or the peers that we work with or match with an organisation, if it's a good fit, it's going to be a good outcome. If it's not a good fit, it's not a great outcome for the peer, and it's certainly not a great outcome for the customer, and in turn is not a great outcome for Disco, because if someone says, oh yeah, I did that thing with Disco, it didn't really work, Dave came in and he really had no idea wasn't a great fit. We wanted to try and make our bingo hall more accessible, and he really had an issue with bingo. I've seen it this way. So if it's not a good fit, or a peer says, look, I don't really want to work in that space, but we go, look, we really need you in that space, and it doesn't fit, then I guarantee you it won't be a good outcome for anybody. And so we really need, and if need be, we need to knock back work if we can't find a good fit. So don't be desperate to do stuff, because if we are, it doesn't work. I've just got to go to Erin first, if that's all right. What was your current?
We don't have after we do a talk or anything, are we going to be able to come to see that and have some
debriefing?
Great question,
Because
Erin.
if you guys send me in somewhere about housing and that, and if some of the stuff play up on my PTSD, definitely need to have. You can't expect people that they'll stay home and.
That's right.
Erin, that's exactly what we were talking to earlier about how important it is that we do debriefing, community of practice, also engage with EAP, but that EAP is not your first point of contact. The first point of contact is with your peers, and making sure that we're really holding each other and always having that debrief. I know when we were doing the disability trust work, where we were doing that training out there, we used to go straight to the pub afterwards, which we declared as meeting room 3, and we'd all go there and really just have that deep debrief on things, and always touching base with each other, making sure that everyone's okay.
There's another aspect to that too, Aaron, which is it's not like debriefing are important, not just for mental health and you know that sort of thing, but it's also to get better. Right? Like what worked well, what didn't work well. Like after, let's say Andrew and I did a bit of work with Maitland City Council around their DAP, their Inclusion Action Plan. And after that, we had a debrief. We sat down with Shaylee was there and Tracy Wright, and so they were, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and what are our learnings from it, so we don't make the mistakes that we made this time, because you will, but we'll make mistakes. That's just part of learning and part of growing. And just the trick is to learn from them and don't repeat them. So yeah, absolutely, debriefing is really critical. Thanks, Aaron.
That was my question, it's all good.
Oh, great.
In the same space, sister.
Okay, so there's only a couple of other things here to talk about in terms of offerings. Understanding co-design is one. So, you know, you guys have all been in the disability space long enough. The co-design gets thrown around pretty easily, right? We're going to co-design this, co-design that. What does that actually mean, though, right? And so we at Disco are going to basically take charge of what that terminology is.
Well, we know what co-design currently means.
Yeah.
It means we'll design something, then we'll give it to some people with a disability and say, what do you think?
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you don't like it, we'll be still asked.
And so that understanding co-design, that can come out in a range of things. It can be talking to businesses and organisations as groups about what true co-design looks like. It can be working with them one-on-one around their co-design as well. Not co-designing anything with them, but facilitating those conversations with the people within that organisation. So a really super quick example would be, say an organisation wants to, I don't know, make their newsletter more accessible, right? And they want to do that via co-design. It would be ridiculous for CEDA to come in and do that if they've got members with disability of that organisation already there. So we can facilitate those conversations for them to work with their own members to co-design that newsletter, right? So it's stuff like that.
So
Chelsea?
would an example be I create the easy read flyers for the events at CEDA, so would I be a person that you might call in to do that, to make their newsletter more accessible, teach them how to do easy read and that kind of thing?
But it'd be yes and no, not just because of that, but because of your broader understanding around disability as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you, Chelsea, by being a part of CEDA, know that you're not just looking at it from an easy read perspective, you're looking at it from a visual perspective as well. You're looking at it from can screen readers access this? So all those other things that you've learned and picked up as being part of CEDA, you bring to the table when talking to organisations about that. Storytelling, the culture change, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the same sort of keynote stuff, going out into organisations, talking to community, sharing your story, to change culture around and how organisations relate to disability. Bryson?
What is the difference between that and a keynote speaker?
The keynote speaker is generally a much more formal process, whereas that might be just asking to be sitting on a panel or something like that. Whereas the keynote speaker will be like a formal, much more formalised approach to that storytelling.
Keynote speaker would normally run the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So a difference might be like I might talk about my experience of being queer and disabled as a keynote speaker, or I might go on a panel that's like broadly about like what are the issues that people in those communities face on.
Or for instance, you know how you've got like the many of CEDA members have attended Reclaim the Night and sort of got up and spoken at that event. That's storytelling for culture change, right? So it's not a keynote speaker. You're not the focus of this conversation, right? But you are bringing disability perspective to whatever action is occurring at that space. Is that cool? Awesome. Douglas.
There's just 2 points on the board I want to talk about. One is with the storytelling. We actually, a couple of years ago, we had a workshop where we looked at the history project of CEDA, and one of the 5 things that came out of that was about telling our stories. Now, what you may or may not be aware of, on our current website, there's lots of videos on there where people have actually are telling their stories about their involvement. And part of our job will be to review those and see how up to date they are. But that's just one of the things around storytelling. So you have the opportunity to talk about your journey, basically. At this point in time, there is no payment for doing that. it's just one of those things that some of us have actually thought of being really good to do. The second thing around with co-design, and I'm going to do a little bit of self-promotion now. I actually wrote a paper here last year that had 364 downloads from Emerald Publishing. Because they didn't have the $4,000, I don't get any of the £27 for each time that's downloaded. Right? And it's one of the things that really irks me is that because of my being from a socio-economic disadvantaged community, I don't have that capital to actually put up front, because that would be like a nice little earner if I actually had that money. The paper's actually been cited twice, and part of the reason why I'm mentioning it is it'd be really good to actually start to get some academic literature around that, what we actually mean by co-design, and collectively writing a paper. It's pretty tedious, but I think having someone like Kate Davies from the university to help lead that would be useful to think about.
So, that's a good point, Doug. Sorry, it's a really good point, Doug. So, Doug's just mentioned another potential idea as part of this. These 4 plans, right, are only for the next 12 to 18 months. Right, these 4 offerings are what we can offer, what we know we can do in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, can I
Right?
jump that too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just about to jump onto that as
Yeah.
well. That's a really interesting point, because we sat down here the other day and went, okay, we need to work out what we're going to do, what we're going to prioritise. So we started our priorities with the things we know we can do, with the things we already do, and really formalising those. That first one around the inclusion insight check is exactly a DAP. We've been through this process, we understand the process, we know how to go there, and we know how to market it. We basically came up with upwards of 30 different offerings in a day about what we could do, and then went, that's ridiculous, we cannot try and bite off 30 different things in one shot. That would be impressive, but no. And we wouldn't do any of them well. So by starting with 4 or 5 really good offerings, and the good thing about every one of these offerings is there's so much more that could leverage off the back of them. So in particular, if you start looking at the auditing or the inclusion, the insights check, it's a jolly sound. Another 20 push-ups. So the inclusion insight check is a great example. From doing an audit, there is so much, and we know this from the DAP, being able to say to organisations, hey, you need to be more inclusive, you need to do more co-design. So we can actually come in and start doing some co-design on product development within an organisation. Your human resource processes for employing people and retaining people and promotional opportunities for people with disability are not where they need to be. We can support that. We can support you to put a lot of your information into Easy Read. So we can really leverage off the back of a lot of the work that we've got here to pick up more work into the future if we build that relationship. So that's the trick, is to build the relationship, build the opportunity to pick up more work. I used to do handyman work years ago. The amount of times I go into somebody's house to fix a couple of taps and put a tile up and end up building a shed for them before I left. Because people go, oh yeah, that's really good. Oh, while you're here, you couldn't do that, could you? Well, it's the exact same principle. Is once you've got a foot in the door, often organisations don't want to let you go. They say, oh, we'll just get in touch with those people from CEDA. They were really good. They were really useful. So, it's how you sort of dance this is really what will build the next steps. So this is just that foot in the door, getting stuff happening so that we can say, yep, we're here, we're doing it, we're active, and then we start moving from there.
One of the aspects too is not just we're knowing we can do it, it's also we are currently a bit limited in the numbers of warm bodies that we could use to do this work too. It's because this is a skill, right? What you guys are doing and have is real skill. So it'd be super easy for us to go out and pick up half a dozen people off the street randomly who have a disability, go, hey, come and do this work, and it will fail, right? It's the processes that we have in place to get people ready to do this work. That's the critical step to this, and we know that's why the disco stuff works.
There's another risk too.
The other risk to that is that if Dave and I go out and poach peers that are involved in activities at CDAH that are really, really important activities, Kelly Summers would kill us.
That is an accurate statement. Well, just as a side note, turn the camera off, Jared. As a side note, this is actually a true story. When Andrew and I were discussing disco in the really super early stages, we kind of wrote up a list of people that we thought could be a part of it and do the work. And so we just had this list on this whiteboard with a list of names, and Kelly's walked into the office and just had this look on her face like, why is this list of names there? What are you doing with my people? So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's not piss off Kelly. I think we've basically come to our end of our presentation. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Does anybody have any big questions? Yeah? Yeah, go for it.
Well, not a question.
Yeah.
Just the really cool bit about this is, what are we here for?
Yeah.
What's this? No, and one of them is Jared's role. Jared's role is as the person whose role is to that linkage between disco and CEDAR and those pathways for peers. So peers that are interested in getting involved in disco really need to be liaising with Jared about building that profile, building those. I'm going to tell people what you do before you get a chance.
Yeah, that's right.
You get the microphone when I'm done. Just blocking his path, Dave. Yeah, so basically Jared's role is he'll make everybody lunch. No. No, very important role is, and it really is an important role to be able to say, okay, if we build a person's profile, work out, if somebody says, I want to get involved in disco, what are the ways that you could, as a CEDA member, like if I'm a CEDA member and I say, right, I'm in a peer group, well, would you like some more experience in doing some facilitation? Because if that's something you'd like to do, let's look at what some of those pathways to support you as an individual into building the skills and the knowledge that it takes to do this work. And that's a really great role to be doing that. Yes, Tanya?
As part of this disco launch with businesses, and launch is spelled wrong, but that's okay.
That's what I just said to
Nobody
myself.
Oh, did you?
Nobody can
Is there gonna be like, is there gonna be a way that we, after it's done with them, we can go back in 8 weeks, 12 weeks and say, bang, we've done this, come and have a look, see how you're managing. Is there a way that there can be like surprise visits or evaluations, you know?
That's a good idea, actually.
It is a great idea.
We probably have to write that into their service.
Well, that's what we, can we do that? Like we're
We-
gonna
yeah,
have
we probably need their
evaluations?
management to know that we're doing that. But yeah, it would be an interesting way to sort of like the secret shopper type thing. Yeah, come in and say, well, you said you were doing that, but I'm not seeing any evidence.
And the beauty of the work we're doing, Tanya, is the beauty of the work we're doing is that it is all local, right? So like we don't even necessarily, need to do it as an official thing, just by you going into a shop, and it not changing its accessibility, or knowing that, hey, didn't Disco do work with this organisation? You can kind of get a handle on it as well. So that's a way of doing it. So Jared, pathways.
I'll see if Andrew is finished talking about me.
No, I hadn't. I still had
I
other stuff.
guess a good way to measure that would be if our members came in to see them and says, oh, did you see that wonderful new accessible bar down the road? And then that's how we would get another way of getting feedback.
Yeah, can I add to
So
that?
that's listening sneaky way, Jared.
So I think that's not really what Jen is saying. I think Jen is saying she wants to know how we would enforce it. So it's one thing to see it, but like,
I can talk to that if you like.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a monetary value.
Jennifer, could you speak to that? And you had a question too, did you say?
Yeah, just quickly on that, I think, and we have already done this, and there's a piece of work that Dave and I have been working on called The Vibe, and for want of a better name, and what it is about when we won't engage with an organisation and the limitations of our engaging. If we start to engage with an organisation, and this is really important for us, that if we feel at any stage that engagement with an organisation is tokenistic, or that they're not sincere in putting together the outcomes that they say they're going to do, we reserve the right to walk away, and that we won't engage with that organisation. We have to draw the line at going out and publicly humiliating an organisation and saying, guess what they're doing, because we'd be in court very quickly, and nobody would engage
No one would
with us.
work with us, that's
Yeah,
right.
and so we can't do that, but what we can definitely do is to say, no, with all the goodwill that you expressed at the beginning of this engagement, we don't believe that the actions are there, and you've said this, but you're not doing it. And I'm not going to go into the organisation, but we've had recently with a particular organisation where Dave and I went and met with their general manager and said, this is not happening, and unless it happens, we reserve the right to walk away. With that, we got really solid buy-in from the manager, and it's where the real change happened. The real change happened was when it was like, whoa, hang on, these guys are serious. And that really comes into your co-design stuff, to say, you invited us into your organisation and now we're telling you what we know. You can either ignore that, you can't unknow what you now know, and we can't work in this space if you're not going to act on it. And so that was really powerful, and it really changed a lot of the way the organisation worked. And not only did we get the managers buy-in, we had other people within the organisation who wouldn't talk to us, ringing us going, we must do lunch. It's great. Yeah, so Douglas.
I've got three things I want to say. One of them is early on I wrote down disco tick. You know how they have the heart tick and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's negatives and positives with that, but like part of what we could do is we could actually, because at the moment we have a category where organisations can join CDAH. And part of that could be like a decal they could actually put up on their front door.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Because this is going to be part of the marketing plan, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you've done a TEA, which is training in a certificate for and training and assessment, like with assessments, there are to be no surprises. People are actually meant to know what's going on. And it's a bit like if you think about it, if you're doing study, like you actually know what the outcomes are, etc. And so, but what we could do with the MAG, the Members Action Group, we could all make a decision that we'll all buy a CDAH t-shirt, and we'll actually go and do our own look around, right? All those organisations have complaint processes, and so we could actually learn as a group how to actually start to put in complaints. You're talking about accommodation. Well, most of those accommodations belong to a state or a national group, but it gets back to how much time you got. Right? The second thing for me is I'd like to see what we won't do. Not what we will do, but what we won't do, and have some rationalisation behind that. And I asked this question earlier, and apparently we have a list, but I'd really like to see it.
No, we won't do that.
No, we won't.
And the last thing to think about, one of the things, if you are going to be involved, one of the things that we will need to know is, do you have a tax file number? Right? And it's okay if you don't have a tax file number, but if you don't have a tax file number, we're legally required to take out 49 cents in the dollar from whatever payments are on the board. That's legally, and we've got to keep those records. They say 7 years, but I can tell you it's 19 years. Right? And so they'll be some of the things, when we actually start, are you ready to go? One of those things, well, have you give us a tax file number? And you can actually get a form where if you don't have a tax file number, you can declare it as a hobby. And you can actually earn up to $20,000 and it doesn't affect your settling payment. I don't know whether you knew that or not.
No,
That's just something to think about.
Maybe to just talk.
Let's talk to that one
Yeah.
first. On that last point, Douglas, that's a real easy one that's why we have processes in place. And that level of engagement with Jared in particular is to say, if this is my intention to do this work, I don't have this stuff organised. I think it's a really important facet of it is to ensure that on an individual basis that we really are taking people's Centrelink obligations, etc., into account. So we're not going, yeah, come and do all this work. Oh, geez, I'm being chucked out of my house now.
Yeah.
So we've got to be very mindful about that, and that's something that we have to manage, and we do that, and we will continue to do that. Yeah. And just very quickly on the tick thing, there are lots of ways around this. I don't think we want to do a formal rating; it's too hard. But there are definitely ways around this where you can actually have what we call consumer or community forums, where you can say, well, if you want to be an organisation that's willing to be part of this forum to get a rating from people who come to visit your establishment, you can certainly do it that way. But there's ways and ways. Kate.
I'm just going to say, as someone with a psychosocial disability, is there scope in Disco to talk about mental health in the workplace?
No. Of course
Yes.
there is. Absolutely, Kate.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Jared, and Dave, you're going to talk to that.
Yeah, just super quickly, just on Doug's point about what we won't do. We've kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. So we're not going to do physical accessibility audit stuff. Like we're not going to get out there with the tape measure and measuring doors and gradients of ramps and all that sort of stuff.
Hey, Jared, try this.
Yeah. So we're not going to do any of that because there's a liability aspect of it too, which is too great. We actually think that there's more. We get more bang for our buck doing culture change and the attitudinal change than those sort of hard physical asset audits that everyone seems to want to do. And in terms of what we won't do, Andrew kind of alluded to it earlier, which was we'll have a decision matrix that will put any kind of ask to us. So essentially, if you come along and go, hey, I'm an organisation and I want to work with Disco, and you submit, that you want to work, we'll sit down with you and do that discovery thing. And if we work out, no, you're actually not really serious about this. This is going to be tokenistic. You're just using it as a bit of coverage.
What's that word mean?
Tick and flicks.
So tokenistic is you don't really mean with it. Oh. You're just doing it to be nice.
To
right?
make it look like you're doing it right.
Tick a box.
Yeah,
a process.
Yeah. So that's that's a huge factor. And so as I said, there'll be, and every Disco member will see the decision matrix. Like they'll see, people will see exactly the processes that we go through to determine the type of work that we do. So it isn't work that puts people in jeopardy. And also you're not under any obligation as a Disco member to work for a particular organisation either. Like if you've got a beef with them or some sort of moral thing, that's fine. We're not going to force you to do it. A great example of this is when we were discussing previously around a bit of work with LWB, Life Without Barriers, that was coming up. And Andrew sent out basically an email to those that would have been potentially involved in the work. Do you have a problem with working for this organisation? And if they'd said yes, then that would have been totally acceptable and that person wouldn't have been working in that. Same is going to be working with Disco as well. If you actually, I've got a real problem working for a club because of their use of poker machines. I've got a moral objection to it. That is a totally legitimate reason not engaged, and you don't have to do the work. So yeah, so Tanya, I know you. Okay, Bryson, sorry.
As part of the disco readiness training, will we have training about like how to know if someone's serious, for example, like how to have those conversations?
Yeah.
Is if we're some of us are the people that are first going and engaging with organisations, but we don't have the experience that you guys might have, like, yeah.
Well, I guess, Bryson, one of the things I can talk to that is that initially, at least in the short term, while we're building Disco, we've actually got a structure where we say, right, as a senior Disco consultant, which at present will be Dave or myself, that we would go in and scope out the work to work out, is this an organisation we want to work with, going through that checklist, but also through what we were talking about earlier about debriefing, and that debrief afterwards. If any member of Disco comes away from it saying that I just don't believe they're really serious about this, and the person that was supposed to be the person we were meeting with is never available, they don't turn up, they've sent a different person every week, we're not training the same people each week, they're just filling seats, and that gets fed back to either Dave and myself, and honestly it's Dave and myself at the moment. As it grows, that will change. So really important to know that, you know, we get that feedback and we feed that back to the organisation to say, look, you know, we can't work like this, and if it continues, if you're not taking it seriously, then we step away.
Sorry, Bryson, were you referring to potential employees of Disco or clients of Disco?
I was talking to potential employees of Disco.
Yeah, okay.
So I hear that at the moment you guys are going to be the senior people, but as the organisation grows, will there be some training? Because like, I'm very green in this space. I'm very naive. I always just assume everyone has the best intentions. So I'd full and go and be like, yeah, I'll work with you, and then get stung.
That's where you work with people like me.
Yeah.
I'm a cynic.
Yeah. And that goes really well into the pathways conversation. So, you would have your very good base skills, but together, if we work together, and you said, hey, I want to do more of that, upper, higher level conversations with organizations. How do we get there? You and I would work together on a pathway for you to train up to build your capacity, so Dave and Andrew are not the only ones.
Yeah, that's what I was
making the initial decision.
Cool.
And Jared, that's not based on hierarchy. That's not based on, oh, you know, Dave and I are senior. Yeah. It is based on clear messaging. Yeah. It's about making sure that what message we give to this organisation is the same message that we give to this organisation. It's very clear and concise, and it's rehearsed.
Yeah. Let's just be clear that you are very senior.
Yeah.
You know what? That wasn't funny yesterday. It's not funny today.
Kate suggested we start a seniors group.
Kate's a good crack up, isn't she? Everybody's funny.
I know in the past when I've done facilitating, we've done it in twos.
Yep.
Is it going to be in twos?
I was gonna, yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got the oldies and then we've got the newbies, so we'll go in with someone that's confident.
We've thought this through, Tanya, and that's exactly the way it's going to work.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You don't have to go on your own.
And particular developing skills, where, as you say, Bryson, if you're green, as you say, green in this space, but you have so much to offer.
Bloody oath you do.
Working with a cynic like me, I'll probably learn to be a bit more. I'll learn a lot more from you than you learn from me. But it really is about that person that's got those skills, actually working alongside somebody and supporting them to develop those skills. Awesome. Katrina's a great example of that. Now, Katrina hasn't got huge experience in the peer space, but her note-taking skills are frightening.
Yeah.
Her ability, it's like bringing a stenographer with you, which is somebody who just takes every single word down. We'll go to a meeting and somebody will go, I took some notes, and Katrina will say, oh yeah, I took some notes. Here's every word that was ever spoken to everybody in the room.
Which is fantastic.
And it's brilliant. She's so good at it. And her ability when she's scribing on the whiteboard to get exactly what's being said
To capture, yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
So she brings particular skills, and so capturing those skills, where if you asked me to do that part of it, I'd be absolutely hopeless.
Same.
Because I need to be in the conversation, and if I'm out of the conversation, I'm writing stuff down, I've missed half the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm not that person. So everybody brings their skills, and so to have one person that can do it all is just not going to happen.
The workload in itself, Tanya, would be too much for
Yeah.
one individual. So yeah, it's always going to be minimum of pairs, all the way through. Even our inclusion training, there's going to be two of them.
Yeah.
One senior, one learner, for want of a better descriptor. And so yeah, because we need, like to Andrew's point a while ago, we're not throwing anyone in there to fail. Right? Like everyone is going to be supported all the way along. Yeah. Cool.
I have a comment. And the comment is around, we've just gone through a fairly long process with reviewing our constitution. And one of the things I'd like... yeah, that's right. One of the things I'd like this leadership group to think about is how we actually describe who can actually do work at CEDA. Like at the moment, if you just use the word employees, the Constitution will actually stop you from being on the board. And part of what I'm always thinking about is we don't want to eliminate the possibility that we could actually have some really good skills on the board for people doing stuff. But if we use the term...
We don't need to. We don't need to, Doug, because your engagement with Disco has no impact on what your membership or position is in CEDA.
No,
so you can be a member of the board and absolutely be being paid to work at Disco.
No, I'm sorry, Dave, I've got to disagree with you. Because...
Currently that's not right.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, just like to clarify,
Yeah.
every month, when Andrew does a report, he actually reports back on Disco.
Yeah.
And where I'm going with this is if I was to be doing one of those things,
Yeah.
at the moment I couldn't do it, right? Because I could do it if I was a consultant, and what I'm getting to with the definitions,
Sure.
you could actually maybe think about clarifying the different,
Great point.
right? Because there will be some voluntary work done. Whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
there is going to be some voluntary work done. But I'd just like that to be like right up the very front.
Yeah.
That how we actually clarify the different types of payment.
Yep.
Because under the Constitution, if I'm engaged as a consultant, that can be clearly documented, and I've registered a conflict of interest. So when we're actually talking about Disco, it can be determined whether I still sit at the table or I actually leave the room.
Yep.
So I just wanted to formally put that while it's being recorded.
No, good mate, thank you.
Yeah, great point, Douglas. And I know that for Erin, it's a concern for you as well, as that there is definitely Disco work that you are very keen to be doing as a board member, and we really want to have solid board members as well. And so that is definitely there is a workaround that has to be done there. And to your point, Dave, in the future of this, I think you'll be dead right, because currently Disco still sits as a project of CEDA. And that is pure, and so constitutionally, it is an issue.
Yep.
It won't be an issue, it will be less of an issue and much more easily quantifiable or fixable, and that workaround will happen. It'll be probably during this next calendar year that Disco will need to start working out what type of entity it is. So CEDA will either become a cooperative, which I don't want to get too much into the complexities of it. That means that it will be its own organisation run by peers equally. That's a really complex and difficult process, and it really means that a lot of the people that could be doing the Disco work will actually have to be running the place as well as a cooperative, which is really hard. Or it can be what they call a company by guarantee, which is another sort of not-for-profit approach as well. So, but Disco will have to become its own organisation. So it will eventually sit outside of CEDA. It just sits in CEDA at the moment. The whole idea of Disco right from the start was for that very reason, Douglas, that if I'm a member of CEDA and if CEDA doesn't want to get involved in working with an organisation, because CEDA has very solid values, and CEDA's values are very much about almost that, would you say it, the integrity of CEDA's values. We don't want to in any way compromise them, which most of what we're doing will not compromise them. But creating that clear line between paid work and being a peer work organisation is a really important thing. So I think that being able to say that Disco sits here next to CEDA, and there is genuine pathways for a CEDA member or associate member with a disability to come and do Disco work, as long as the only real ruling there would be that you have to be a CEDA member in order to get involved in Disco, and that's an entry point, but it's still a different organisation, and it will become its own organisation. So to be a CEDA member or associate member which means that in order to be a CEDA member or associate member, anyone who's signed their membership knows that you have to adhere to CEDA's code of conduct and CEDA's values, which is how we hold people true to what they say they're going to do, and how we hold each other true to it as well. So that's the important side of this that I think is that point of clarity that will happen during this year. Tanya?
I noticed before in one of the slides that you had membership fee. Do we need to pay a fee now? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's $50, Tanya, just give it to me. No.
You're did, aren't you? I know
That's straight down the bottom with that. We do have a membership fee, because now what we've done, Tanya, is in the last 12 months we basically, and I said this at the AGM, we spilled our membership, because that way we really want everybody that is a member of CEDA to stay a member of CEDA by their choice, not by saying, oh well, I signed up to be a member of CEDA 8 years ago, and so whether I like it or not, I'm still a member. This gives people that genuine voice, choice and control over whether they stay a member. There's an arbitrary fee of $1. If somebody, so it's $1 a year to be a member. If a person can't afford the dollar or doesn't afford the dollar, we'll waive the fee. But there is an actual fee of $1. So. Jared.
And I'm on the self-management board, and if you really can't afford that dollar, you can claim that on your dues as community participation. Yeah, please.
Claim your dollar.
I would love to see that receipt.
Yeah, I want to see that. Can I do that? I'm going to do that.
Sorry. I hate being the bloody challenger, but currently the board has actually waived the membership fee for CEDA.
Yep.
All we're requiring people to do is to renew their membership on the website. And so with those 145 people, 90 people have actually done that, and we're following up with the other 50 that haven't realised they've got to renew again.
Yep.
So it's at no fee at the moment.
There you go.
Sorry for...
No, thanks Douglas. I was...
To be honest, I was waiting. But that's straight from the board secretary, so there you go, you have it, and it's recorded that the fees are waived. But yeah, there is a token fee of $1, but it has been waived by the board.
I didn't realise that.
I'll just spend the next 10 minutes because Dave and myself and Charles have a meeting at 1 o'clock as well to talk about what peers in the room and peers watching how pathways will work a little bit. So Bryson gave a really good example of having a base level of skill and wanting to train up a little bit more. So I want to be, look at me, typical CDAH. We're always talking about what we want to do before we do it. but I won't be the gatekeeper to you moving forward in disco. I will work with you to facilitate those conversations and those training opportunities for you to move forward. So if you, I know Sarah, when you were talking about skills audit, you said, I've done one of those. And you did do one of those, and a lot of people in this room have done one of those. But just like we were talking about being disco ready, those need to be updated every time you've contributed a certain amount of time. And I know since then you've done a bunch of other things as well. So for those who don't know, the skills audit is a tool that we use to capture where your skills are. So we ask you what we call curious questions about what you know, your experience, your life experience, your employment, and we have a big play in developing that tool when we're working on peer-to-peer together. So those are the types of things we would use as a base state to see where you are. Then, so to keep using you as an example, but you're doing community connections now, so you might have an idea of what your skills are from being in community connections, but you might work with me to really pull out what you've known and maybe putting names to some of the skills that you naturally do in that type of work. So, and then you might, so this is not an overnight thing. So this girl is not gonna press go and you're gonna be left behind. It's a process, it's a moving process. As I said in the beginning, if you do the work that you are currently doing, that's the best place to start. And then, so, you know, if it comes to light that you might need it, we've decided together, you and I, that mentor training is the best thing for you to do. Then I would facilitate that conversation with you to have with whoever is running mentor training or organize some type of, it might be even external training you might want to do. A possibility that came up and you're like, you know, I think this will be really good for me in terms of disco, but also for my personal professional development. So we're really just about having really informal conversations with me. It's all confidential. It's all confidential, and like I said, I won't be the one deciding your fate. That will mostly be up to you. But yeah, and then I can also help you have like difficult conversations or tricky conversations with management or people who are making decisions that you want to be a part of. I can work through those processes with you. A little bit like a career coach, but that's a bit scary for me. Then I'm envisioning that this will kick off in 2024 probably, where we will probably meet once every 4 to 6 weeks and develop a 6-week plan of, okay, what's the first step? What's the first 6 weeks? What are you going to do in the first 6 weeks of your professional development plan?
Very good. Keep going on that in a minute, but I just want to jump onto something. And that is that one of the first things that we're going to do into next year is Disco's launch. and we haven't got to that today, which we really did want to, and that is on the 27th of February. Yeah, it is. Yeah, 27th, just remember it's the seniors moment. On the 27th of February, I will well and truly be 60 by then, so...
Big party address?
No. So, we will be launching disco at the museum. It will be, and we'll make sure that we'll get more information out to people. But for those peers who are interested and genuinely interested in getting and being a part of disco, we really want to look at this as a first engagement and a first opportunity for people to come along, get involved. We're inviting everybody who's anybody in the broader community to come along. We're expecting this to be a sizable launch. We're not mucking around. We're here to really genuinely launch our intent to do this, and we're really looking at having peers there that can talk to disco, talk about it, talk about their experience, talk about what we'd like to see in the community, you know, press the flesh basically, do the schmoozing. Dave will explain how to do that. That's very much in his wheelhouse. Yes, Tanya?
I just wanted to ask, since we have a local member in the room, we need to advertise this.
We are. So we are. We've. Sorry, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, no, we are, Tanya. We've developed a sort of a VIP invite list to send out, including, you know, and as Andrew said, we're making it big. So we've invited, you know, Bill Shorten and Amanda Risworth, and so senior politicians, senior leadership in the community, also senior business leaders as well, because they'll be our clients, right? And so it's not. We're not just. I don't think we kind of made this as explicit in our presentation as we probably could have. We're not just talking about doing this work in the disability sector. This is across all sectors. So every type of organisation, every type of business can be utilising disco.
Well, there's a huge appetite in the hospitality sector.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Ted.
Have you guys created a launch package yet?
So Natalie and myself are kind of putting one of those together as well. A lot of the details have been ironed out. We're just looking at a few of the smaller things like organising catering, organising an event stylist, which is a new terminology I hadn't heard previously, but basically someone that makes the room look pretty for us, which is great.
Is that one of Natalie's?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's a Natalie term.
Entertainment?
Yes, we are. We're in negotiation at the moment with a couple of different options. Potentially Matt McLaren, yeah. But there's also a couple of jazz.
We have a jazz combo.
A jazz combo as well. So yeah. Sorry.
I know a few that maybe might be good for that.
Great. Yeah. So I mean those sort of detailed stuff isn't locked in, but the majority, the big steps are, which venue, time, place, and an invite list for people who's already ready to go. So that that'll go out either end of this week. Natalie and I are sitting down on Friday to hopefully fix it and do the invite list, or early next week. So yeah.
Can I just say, you're not going to sit and just talk like we are today?
No,
are you?
absolutely.
You're gonna have slides and
Yep.
everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea will be to have very few chairs and tables and stuff in the venue at the museum. It's sort of like, those hi-hat, they call hi-hat bar stools and stuff like that, and then smaller ones as well. And just people being able to mingle around. There will be people up there talking, so there'll be a series of speakers. So Andrew, obviously, but also some peers will be speaking on their experiences. Some industry groups as well that we will have either worked with or are keen to work with us. We've already got a list of names that we're pretty sure we'll be able to talk to that as well. And then
What about sample bags?
Yeah, sample bags there for people.
Basically, these products will be in those sample bags as well.
The critical part that Jared mentioned though is after the formal aspect of the presentation, which will be about an hour and a half-ish long. After that's done, then we've basically factored in 2 hours of networking time. So, and that's where you guys, if you want to do this work, that's it. That's where you really step up. It's talking. It's talking to clients, it's talking to potential clients rather, and explaining and pushing the disco line. And don't worry, again, because we don't want people to fail, you will get heaps of training on how to do this. You'll get a script.
Train you.
Yep.
I'm good at that apparently.
You are.
You are a superstar at that. You're down. You're on.
If you're in, Cisco.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So sorry, Jared, I'll hand it back to you in a second. So we will absolutely skill you guys up, and with a script and a kind of a presentation package, whatever you need, for you to feel comfortable in this space and to talk to this stuff. So.
Can we practice?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Sorry.
That's what we're good at.
Bryson had a question.
Yeah.
That was my question about that.
Yeah, and honestly, Naomi, I would really love it if you were part of that training to support people in doing it.
Yeah.
I watched you do this. You're very, very good at it.
And without looking at anybody's Christmas calendars, it will probably need to kick off mid-January before we, otherwise we're going to run out of time. But the career coaching me would just preface to say, this is only if you want to do it. Don't feel like this is, you have to do this to show off your stuff. Like, we want people to want to do it and to smash it out of the park for just go about mostly for yourselves as well.
Can I just add one really quick point, Jared?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Just 1 minute, that's all I need.
I've got the microphone.
Watch out.
A key point to what you're saying there, Jared, is this: disco is not a job. Disco is an extension of a peer network. It is an opportunity to go out and really create real change. And the bonus, more than anything, is the getting paid for doing it. It is not, I really would be disappointed if people went, I'm going to get into disco, that way I'll have a job, and this is about me and my job. It's not, it's about building that peer network, but getting paid for what you do. And also acknowledging that if you're a member of disco, don't forget you're a member of CEDA, and that pathway goes back and forth. So, don't get into disco and say, right, I've made it now, I'm in the big league, and I'm wearing the seersucker suit and I'm on the dance floor. It's also being a peer in CEDA that actually galvanises the work we do. So never lose sight of that. That is the critical point.
Sarah?
Can I still do community connections in the disco?
Yes.
That's exactly what
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
getting at, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
would,
Turned that out on my our thing, exactly the same thing.
I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, because that work you do there is the work that will support you to do disco better. And it's in the sorry, mate.
In the training sector, anybody that's done TAFE, worked in a TAFE or worked as a trainer, an assessor, there's what they call recognition of currency. So if you're working in this space, if you're not current, so I can't teach counselling if I'm not working and I can't prove that I'm currently working as a counsellor in some way as well, I can't teach it because I don't know it anymore. It's not current. As you said, Jared, I can't say, oh, I'm a mentor if I haven't done mentoring for 3 years. I trained as a mentor, but I haven't done it. Then I'm not a mentor, I've trained as a mentor. And that skill is no longer current. So I have to look at increasing my currency. Think of the work you do at CEDA and the impact that you have at CEDA as your currency. Because you can't do disco well if you're not a current and active member of CEDA as well.
Yeah, I just like to echo the sentiment that CEDA is not disco's poor cousin or less than or whatever. They are on equal footing and they're as important as each other. So thanks everyone for joining us on our second workshop on disco. We had our first one in the old office. That was really good. That's online if you want to watch that one. and this one will be online probably tomorrow. Yeah, for half an hour. I also want to thank all my camera crew behind the scenes. It's a very good example of the paying it forward and a collective teamwork where people are just willing to step up and make it happen for all of us. So thanks for that, and thanks to Andrew and Dave for I didn't give you much preparation to this at all. I think I gave Dave 10 minutes. I gave Andrew about 45 minutes before you walked on, so I appreciate it. Both of you gentlemen, and have a great rest of the day. Don't forget the Christmas party.
Yeah, Christmas party.
Yeah.
Yep.
Next Friday.
Yes. Yep. Excellent. Great.
Cool.
Great job.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.